Hey there, welcome to Her Truth Revealed, unraveling our midlife era. I'm your host, Wonderful Morrison. This space is for the woman who's done pretending, done hiding, and ready to step fully into her truth. Midlife isn't about fading into the background. It's a time where resilience lights the way and authenticity becomes the loudest voice in the room. In this season of our lives, we are more than just survivors. We are creators, revolutionaries, and unapologetic women rewriting the rules. I've been through my battles, rebuilding from loss, betrayal, and heartache. But here's the truth. Every challenge, every tear, and every setback has led me to this moment of profound transformation. Together, we're going to dive into raw, real conversations that shatter stereotypes, tackle the tough stuff, and embrace the powerful magic that is midlife. So, if you're ready to live this chapter with boldness and joy, hit subscribe. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it and leave a review so we can keep this revolution going. Ladies, no more masks, no more apologies, just the truth of who we are. Let's do this. Welcome to another episode of Her Truth Revealed. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this particular interview because this woman, Jessica, that I met maybe a month ago via online has been like my new, we have so much in common. We have so much, not just our trajectory of life, but the way we see the world, the way that we want to fight for the things we want, do we stand for? Before we even hit record here, we'd already been in conversation of like, if we don't hit record, it's never going to happen. So a little bit about Jessica from my perspective, not reading her bio, because I think we need to, I'll let her tell that story. We met through, she has a a women gathering community that just happens to network every now and then, right? And it's called Bloom Society. And I thought, I'm going to go check this out and see. She invited me to speak at her very first January event. And immediately, just in our text conversation, hit it off. You know what I'm saying, people? Those people you meet in the 8 billion population that we have going on, you connect with this person, you're like, oh my gosh, everything she says, everything I say, we're just feeding off of each other's magic. And this is my introduction to Jessica, to the rest of my audience, is magical connections, divine interventions. When it's all aligned, it happens, and you meet the right people who get what you're about, who get where you're trying to go. And it is met with celebration and unity. So that is my friend Jessica, who I just met a month ago. Welcome to Her Truth Revealed.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here because we have some things to talk about. So one of the ways I want to start this off is tell us about your soul transformational journey that brought you to owning a brick and mortar, homeschooling your child, and fighting for all the causes that you fight for.
Oh my gosh. Do we have like 6 hours? It's a lot. I'll try to shorten it as much as possible, but I'll just give you a quick synopsis of like my childhood. So my mom and my dad split when I was 2, and my life was great as a small child, a loving family. Even though my mom and dad were split, it was all great. And then my mom met my stepdad when I was probably like 2 or 3. Long story short, he's not a good man. He's actually currently on trial for possibly murdering his own mother. So, but she left my stepdad when I was 15 or 16. But that whole span of time, In the 8 years of that, my real dad was not in my life because my stepdad didn't want him in our life. And my dad decided it was better for me to not fight, which I wish he would have. He's no longer with us now. Love him dearly, miss him. And then, of course, I found him when I was in my teens. And it was a tough relationship because of all the time lost. But nevertheless, I learned a lot from my dad. But so during that span of time, there was a lot of abuse, particularly emotional abuse. And then, of course, a little bit of physical with my two younger siblings and a little bit with my mom. Not so much with me because I was standing up to him. Just to give you a little giggle, like if I knew he was coming after me, I'd put books in my pants and he'd hurt his hand and I'd take off out the front door. So I've kind of always been in that place. I might have to move because I got the sun starting to come in my face. But I've always sort of been in that place of like, no one's going to hurt me. But during high school, I dated a guy for the entire 4 years of high school till 2 years out of that. He, unfortunately, probably a learned behavior for me, but he was abusive. And I ended up in 2 domestic violence shelters. I actually went through some homelessness. And that was a tough time in my life. And then I met my husband unexpectedly. That was not looking to be with anybody. And he just kind of like, I don't know, gave me the time and space to heal and grow. And I gave him a lot of thanks for that because I don't think I'd be where I'm at now without him giving me that grace. He's so gentle and, So then, of course, moving forward, we had my son, Landon. And once I became a mom, a lot of things changed for me. He was just my number one, always. I mean, I homemade his baby food and I went through a lot after having him. I went through some postpartum complications. He went through some health issues. So they put me on painkillers. So this will probably be a little TMI, but I'm just going to tell it anyway. So after having him, I tore really bad. And so bad to the point that anytime I'd have a bowel movement for 6 months straight, it felt like shards of glass were coming out of my body. Wow. So that's why they had me on painkillers, but they had me on NSAID drugs, which if you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But what I didn't know the dangers of that at the time. And without taking a lot of probiotics with that, it wreaks havoc on your immune system and it can cause an overgrowth of candida, which it did. And it passed through my breast milk. And so then it ended up in Landon's body. So then he ended up with issues that we still battle with today. So then I went through other health issues. So right as I was starting to heal from all that, I lost a ton of weight and I was starting to look really ill. I ended up finding out that I had hyperthyroidism. And right at the time that I found out, I went into a thyroid storm, or I was about to. I was just on the brink of going into a thyroid storm. And they told me you have to either take it out, shut it down via radioactive treatments, or be on synthetic hormones for the rest of your life. And I was like, no, no, and no. It doesn't make sense to take it out or do any of those things. There's got to be a way to repair it, right? So I did my own research and I did end up finding a way to manage my thyroid. So I never had to do any of those things, but that also put me in a place of really researching to help my son. I'm going to move, sorry. Because of the sun. I had a feeling that was going to happen. So that sent me on a whole new trajectory of learning about food, learning about supplements, all these things. And I've just kind of in my adult life been in this mode of learn on my own, find things out for myself, figure out what's right. Don't trust anybody, what they say, find out for yourself, go find the truth on your own. I've been through that spiritually. I've been through that in so many ways. But with all of that, with his health, the Western medicine wouldn't recognize his condition. So, and the reason they wouldn't recognize it is because you can't prescribe any pharmaceuticals for it. So insurance wouldn't cover anything that he needed. So I took it upon myself. And at the time we weren't doing well financially. So especially because it was hard for me to work because I had to be home to care for him. Preschools wouldn't even take him because of how bad his eczema was. His skin was always broken and weeping and bleeding. And they said it was a health hazard to the other children. So I ended up putting a fundraiser together for him called the Landon Scott Fair. I had over 60 vendors. I had a bounce house. I had a few bands. We had face painting. It was really great. This was in San Diego. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. That was the very first time I'd ever done anything somewhat entrepreneurial, but it was a fundraiser for my kid. Well, this woman by the name of Linda West, she was one of my vendors. She was putting on large foodie festivals in San Diego, and she was putting on the Lemon Zest and Garlic Fest. And so she was there to promote the event. Well, at the end, after the event, she contacted me and said, I'm really impressed with how well organized the event was. I would love to have you on my team. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, but I can't because I have to be home to take care of my son. She goes, oh no, you're going to work from home. I'm going to pay you. Normally, everyone who works with me, it's all volunteer based, but I want to help you and your son. So we're going to do this on the honor system. So I jumped in and did that with her. And little did I know what was coming from that. This woman changed my life. She showed me things I had never experienced. She was the one that introduced me to networking. I don't know if you've ever heard of the event Secret Knock that takes place in San Diego, but it's this big to-do event. Big names go there. And so she got me a ticket to go for free because she would help sell tickets for the event. So I got to go meet some pretty cool people there. And then they also had a bunch of authors there who do like self-help and motivational type of books. And so we got all these free books that got signed. I still haven't read all of them. It was a lot. But then she also threw me into her mastermind group for free. And as I was working with her with these foodie festivals, I started to learn some of my gifts that I hadn't tapped into before. And so one of the things I would help with was every festival, it would benefit a nonprofit organization. And they would have a booth at the event. But if they couldn't be there to set up their booth, man it, then I was the one who would step in and do that. And the first time I did it, I had a line going down the row at the booth. And all the vendors were like, how did you do that? So one day in the mastermind meeting, they're like, Jessica, you have so many gifts. You need to start a business. You need to do something. And so out of that, one of the girls said, you really should do something with helping vendors with their booths. So out of that, Rock Your Booth was born. And I started doing workshops. And the first one I did was in the living room of Linda's house. And then I finally did one like at an actual location. And then I moved here to Washington in 2017 and carried on with Rock Your Booth here. But what was interesting here is people would start asking me, well, okay, I like all the information is great, but can you do it for me? So I decided to give it a try, and I was literally building things and became a contractor in my basement, but not charging enough. So then I was like, I don't know that I want to do this. So I ended up not doing that anymore. There's some gaps in between, with COVID and whatnot, and during all that time. But during that time, I decided to just start crafting at home. And then I started doing markets and, I was making t-shirts like the one you're wearing and, tumblers and all this stuff. It's just something to occupy my time with and do something until I figured out what I was going to do next. But I had also been managing a chapter for a nationwide women's connection group that I had stepped down from in 2020 for various reasons. I stayed in touch with a lot of the members. In spring of 2023, I was having coffee with one of them, and she said, I really missed the chapter. And I said, I missed it too, but I didn't want to represent that company anymore. And so she's like, well, why don't you just go start one on your own? And I was like, girl, that's a big undertaking. All I had to do was show up and run a meeting and and connected. I didn't have to do all the other things. So I actually had a coach at the time who's still a great friend of mine that was helping me with my craft business and, getting all that online and doing all these things. And I mentioned it to her and she goes, I really think you should do it. Like, okay. So I went to the drawing board and came up with Bloom Society. And I established it in 2023, but didn't actually launch it. And that was spring of 2023 until fall of 2024. And then it was right at the beginning, like in December of 2024. I was doing all kinds of markets. And the last market I did, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. The unloading and the loading and just all the things. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's exhausting. And so some friends of mine opened up a consignment shop in downtown Puyallup. And I said, what do you guys think if I opened one up, over in a different area in conjunction? They're like, oh my gosh, go do it. So I found the location we're at in Ruston. I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. I'm going to have a shop in addition to it. So that's kind of the short synopsis of how I got to where I am now. And it's been a wild, sorry, I did not think about the sun being an issue. It's been a wild, wild journey to get to where I am now with everything I've been through. And I will tell you, if someone would have told me back in my early 20s, like at the time that I had experienced homelessness, that I was in the shelters, if someone would have told me back then that this is where I was going to be now, I would have been like, how? Like, how?
Right.
So yeah, I've just become really passionate about bringing women together because of all the experiences I've had with women. I know a lot of what I've just talked about now is really positive, but in high school, I was not popular. I would get made fun of. The guy I was dating, which he was popular, which was interesting, but I would get cheated on with popular girls. And I was a choir girl, so I would, I always found my safe place in the choir room when I felt like I needed to at lunchtime. I was always puzzled by how mean girls would be. I never understood it. I never understood what the point of it was. And then as I got older, and then when Linda started introducing me to networking and particularly women's groups, because I hadn't done a whole lot, after becoming a mom, it was just kind of me, maybe a few friends. And then going into these groups and actually seeing the behaviors of some of these women, I was like, oh my gosh, they're still acting like they're in high school. This is crazy. So then I did find a group where it wasn't as much like that. It was more about like getting women connected in a more heart-centered way, which is the company I ran the chapter for prior to starting Bloom Society. And which sounds great, but there were some reasons I stepped down that I don't want to talk about and get into that. But just going through the experiences I've had with women and truly like taking a step back and observing women is something I've really done a lot of, and finding that a lot of the ways that women behave negatively with one another is because of their own insecurities. And once we take a moment to recognize that and realizing that a lot of us share the same insecurities, we just don't talk about it. Share the same fears or feelings, but women don't talk about it. Or coaches, or motivational speakers will put on a show, but not truly get deep in their own personal stuff to let everyone else relate to them and go, oh yeah, she's just like me. And so when I finally experienced some speakers like that, I was like, oh, that's cool. Because now you're letting women know that anybody can do that. That you're, special. The one who really stands out to me that kind of gave me that feeling was Stacey Ellen. And what's interesting, I just recently found out that the one time I saw her speak, it was her first time speaking. And I didn't know that at the time. And I just recently found that out by one of her posts because she shared that time of speaking, was like, I can't believe it's been this long since the first time I spoke. And I was like, wait, that was her first time? Because I would have never guessed, and she shared a really wonderful story. So yeah,
it's your story, right? Just how you really, if you look at the timeline of your entire scope of life, it all was driving to reveal the version of you that needed to be where you're at today, right? To be the advocate for women like yourself that struggled during those early years in that space, or with your son. It's so funny because another woman who I met through you, Cammie, her daughter struggled with eczema, and I was that kid when I was growing up. I mean, I missed school because of just how bad it would get and things like that. So it's really interesting. Our experiences shape us, which we hear all the time, right? Oh, our experiences shape us. But does it shape us to walk into who we're meant for or meant to be? Or does it make us shy away from that? That's the thing I think is fascinating about you. What I felt like, oh my gosh, it's like kindred spirits, because same situation where I went running towards how it was going to reveal me. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, right? I just knew there was something else in there, like, I don't think so. Not today, Satan, not today, right? And it's fascinating that all of our life's challenges sharpen that space for us. So in this, let's talk about the sister wound thing, because that's a big, big one for all of us, right? It really shapes us. And what you were saying is, you know, I heard something today, I actually posted it, about we need to teach from our scars, not our wounds. And what it really implies is that when we're in our wound, it's still, sometimes it can be infected, like abuse, certain abuses and things like that. But when we're teaching or supporting or being compassionate in the world with our scars, it had already healed. So I think so much of the sister wound that we all experience as women, especially as we get older, because in our younger years, we're kind of like, yeah, whatever, Susie, we're over you. We're going to go over here. But as we get older, it just gets smaller. Those spaces get smaller. You're still wounded from that experience of the youth. Why did you choose to run I get it, like running a business. I ran a business for 20 years and never went to a single networking anything. So as you're becoming an entrepreneur with this young child and the complications and the whole hyperthyroidism, you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to add on and run a chapter of Women Connection. Why was that a thing? Why did you feel compelled to do that?
Because when I became a member of that particular group in San Diego, and I saw how women could come together in a positive way and can uplift each other and not hold on to those behaviors from high school and that mean girl mentality, it just, I don't know, it lit a fire in me. And I became extremely passionate about that, of bringing women together in a positive way. One of the things that, like I said, I observed a lot in women's behaviors. I did it in high school. I've done it in my adult life. And to help open women's eyes and hearts up to the possibilities that we have in being connected to one another in a heart-centered way is absolutely possible. One of the things that I think is the biggest issue amongst women is conflict resolution. So instead of actually, when something negative happens or there's negative feelings involved, instead of actually going to the source and saying, hey, you know, when you said this thing or did this thing, or I heard, it made me feel, and let them respond. Instead, a lot of women are running to the next woman to go, my gosh, you're not going to believe what so-and-so did or what so-and-so said, or what I heard. And so then they tell other women. And next thing you know, there's all this gossip going on. It's like the game of telephone. And now it's turned into this big thing that it wasn't in the beginning. So conflict resolution, I believe, is a huge, huge thing. And I want to make it very clear that I'm not perfect. We all have moments, right? But being able to step back and go, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. Own the mistake, take care of it. So it's, yeah, I became super, once I got to a place of just observing enough to see what was possible when women actually do come together. And I've witnessed how that trickles out. So when women come together in that positive way, it does something to us spiritually, right? It does something to us mentally in a positive way. So then when we leave from that moment and we go out to carry on with our lives, that's trickling out in everything else we do.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Okay, I love what you're saying, because I believe it to be true that women can positively come together. But then there's like these obnoxious shows like the Housewives of this, which actually perpetuates all of the things we don't know, right?
And I actually watch those shows, but I watch it to observe the behavior because it's become a thing in my life where I'm fascinated with watching the behaviors of women. And there's so many times I want to just jump through the screen and be like, wait a minute, there's a better way to handle this. This is ridiculous. But yeah, I do watch some of them. Just like I said, it's for the sake of observing behavior. It's a little bit entertaining. But yeah, sometimes I'm just floored by their behaviors and the way that one of the things I see a lot too is when a woman is hurt in some way by another woman, they become very closed off. It's all about them and nobody else. This is the way I feel. This is the way I feel. And that's the only thing that matters in this situation. You see that a lot in those shows.
For sure.
I know the last episode I watched of Beverly Hills, I think Dorit was one of those where it was just like all about her feelings and nobody else's, and not taking into consideration that, well, this person that hurt your feelings is also going through some crazy stuff in her life that may be triggering the way she's acting. And so as women, it's being able to do that, being able to sit and stop for a second and actually open your eyes to the bigger picture. Okay, well, if this woman said this thing to me, well, what's going on in her life right now that made her act that way? Maybe she's acting out. Maybe she's stressed out. Maybe there's something going on in her life that I don't know about and I'm not aware of. And I think that oftentimes with women, there's not enough grace given. And I'm not saying allow women to walk all over you or to not have your boundaries in place, but there are times when grace is needed. And when yeah,
I agree.
When grace is needed. And sometimes I think amongst women, there's not enough of it.
I agree. I truly agree with that statement. And I still, so when I started networking, when I started this online business almost 6 years ago, well, probably 6 years ago, I was just in awe of like, wow, there's some really great connections and energy. I didn't realize at the time it was energy, right? Because it was the person who was facilitating it and kind of bringing the people together. That I think is a special source in human beings. So even though we're talking about, and mind you, half of those shows are super scripted to show our sort of the idea of what it is for women in this particular lifestyle, or how the world can see women behave, which is always never. I mean, I think 50% of that show is crap, and the other 50 is like, yeah, it could happen, but not as regularly as every single week, people. Not every week, okay? There's not that much drama every single week in people's lives. However, so you were running a chapter and then you start your own. What do you think is the formula when you're passionate about women connection and the positive connection? You said positive like 100 times. So you're very geared towards this positive thing. But what's the negative in this women ran, women facilitated, only women type of connection networking versus this positive arena you're talking about? Because I hear what you're saying and I get what you're saying. But what does that really mean when people walk into that space?
So you can have, I'm just going to speak from my own experience because I've been in another women's group and some of them are great and some of them are not so great. And there's two things that stand out to me the most. Number one, whether or not when you walk into one of those groups for the first time, if you leave feeling seen, valued, and heard, then you were at a great group. But if you leave feeling like nobody noticed me, that's not a good group. And that's my opinion, just from everything I've experienced. The other thing is the structure. And while some women might think, well, I like it when there's less structure, that may work for you. But the issue at hand with that is that not all women can be without the structure. And without the structure, that's how cliques form. Because there's no guidance. There's no guidance into who they're connecting with or who they're sitting with, or guiding them to connect with somebody that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have any interest in connecting with. And so that's how cliques form. When there's no structure, it's always the same women sitting with the same women, they've got the buddy, and then it's always the same women feeling left out. And so with the structure in place, one of the things that I stay laser focused on is making sure there's always activities that put women with different women each time we come together. And so that's what creates the sisterhood, because now this woman has connected with that woman and that woman and that woman at some point. And that's what keeps the sisterhood together, because now they all are getting to know each other on a deeper level and understanding each other on a deeper level instead of the surface level. Because oftentimes in other groups where there isn't that structure, as one person, let's say you, right? And not you though, because you would probably be the one to go connect with everybody. But I'm talking about the average woman here, that if they were going to a group without structure, it's probably going to be the case that they're always with the same women. Another woman says something or does something that sparks their interest. But then the introverted women are typically the ones that get left out. And they're the ones that are trying to figure out where they fit in. And they're the ones that appreciate the structure the most. But everyone benefits from structure. And so that's what it's like to walk into a more positive environment with women, is seeing that you leave feeling seen, valued, and heard, and making sure that everyone involved in the group collectively understands the values. So anytime someone becomes a member of Bloom Society, they have an overview with me. I give them an overview presentation of our values, how we operate, so that they understand how we operate. So they come into it knowing what's expected. So if you see somebody coming in for the first time and they're trying to figure out where they fit in or where to sit, be like, hey, I'm so-and-so, come sit with me. And if I don't see that happen, then I'll be the one to go, rush up to them and say hi and be like, here, there's a seat right next to so-and-so. There's a seat right next to Wonderful. This is Linda. Linda, this is Wonderful. And then, oh, by the way, you guys have this in common, if I know, and trying and keep everything going and moving as far as the connections go. So
I think that the way that you even say it too, when you initially said structure, immediately, right? Like probably all women are like, oh man, not this thing. What I love about what you say about it, it's in these really detailed spaces that you're talking about structure, not the actual meeting itself or
right.
the meet. You remember back in the day, and well, I don't know about any of you guys, but back in the day, there was always like the meetings of the meeting, right? Like somebody took notes of who said what time it started, the objectives, the whole thing. That is the structure that's sort of stifling in that
right.
environment, where you're talking about like how to create structure for connection. And that is a different theme. And my very first networking event was that not fun structure, pretty big organization, not going to name names. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm already full of structure.
Right. It has the structure, but then it lacks the connection structure. So you're like,
yes,
put the structure in place, but now what am I supposed to do? Right.
Exactly. And then it becomes more of like, I'm meeting you because I have to, because the way that this is, where it's not like a human thing of, hey, welcome to the. So I'm going to share my personal experience with your group. First of all, it took me a minute to get there, like the distance. I remember my niece was like, wow, you must really like these people if you're going to drive. And no, people who know me know I do not like to drive. And I get there, but what was really amazing is I had no clue that you had a 50-50 split there of new people and members. Couldn't tell. Had zero clue who had never been there before. And what's fascinating is right afterwards, everybody in these networking, oh, we're going to connect, we're going to meet up. That's the common way that we greet each other or say goodbye to each other. We'll connect. No, everybody was pretty serious about that, because immediately I get home and I got messages and, I've already been on 3 calls with Tasha. Like, it's a thing. And I thought, oh, I want to talk to her about because I've met other group owners that I love certain groups. And some groups I'm like, last time I'm going to be there. And what's fascinating is sort of it really does come from the leader, like how that connection group or that networking group or that community group is shaped. And then it trickles, like you said earlier, there's a trickle effect, right? So it's interesting that your initial mentorship, Linda, in San Diego was the version of you now that is like, oh, we got to do, because you mentioned the stories of like, she wanted you to connect with the right people. She got you into your mastermind. She invited you to these things. And because she saw in you a person that is a human connector, like, I call your type of woman the human whisperer, right? Where you can just gather people. And I say that with all the love because I realize as much as like you said, you'd never just be stuck there waiting for people. I am a social butterfly, but that is not the same as a human whisperer at all. Like I'm not a gatherer of people. Like it's not something I think about or was like, oh, I'm going to build a bunch of sets for a marketplace and also get a bunch of people together on a regular basis to connect, right? It takes a special human being to do that. What do you think? Like, yes, you're saying the formal spaces of building these, like structure and connection, but what is it about what's in you that makes you want this experience for other women?
I think because I've had so many negative experiences in my life that I personally long for the positive experiences, right? And so me finding that they're possible and sort of learning the formula to that just makes me so passionate to go share that and allow others to experience that. Because let's be real, there are times that life can feel like a lonely place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we get wrapped up in our fears, when we get wrapped up in our insecurities, we get wrapped up in staying in our comfort zone because of fear and insecurities, right? And so also making it this safe space to let them start stepping out of their comfort zone and sort of exploring themselves more. One of the things that I find, and I'm sure you can relate to this, one of the things with Linda that I guess she helped me get to know myself on a whole different level. And that is that prior to meeting Linda, I did not like being on camera. I did not like having my picture taken. Like,
yeah,
challenged me. And she said, at the time, that was when Facebook Lives were just taking off. And so she challenged me, you're going to go do your first Facebook Live. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's with Landon. So finally, I remember looking at her like, you're crazy. Like, that's not happening. And she's like, no, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And so I'll never forget it. It was after I had gone to the Habitudes Warrior Conference, which is where I saw Stacey Ellen speak. And I was like, okay, I've got to do this. And we got Habitude Warrior sunglasses, like these black sunglasses that say Habitude Warrior on the side of them. And Landon had those on. He was wearing those sunglasses. We were at an outdoor mall in San Diego. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to do a Facebook Live together. We were sitting at one of the benches and I jumped on and I don't even remember what we said or what, but I just jumped on and did a live and I was like, okay, I did it. And she kept pushing me like, keep doing it. And so being on camera like that, especially where you see your face, like just right now, you get to know yourself on a whole nother level. You start to see yourself the way other people see you, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes you become more comfortable in your own skin as you start to get to know you almost in the same way that other people see you. And so anyone who's watching this, if you haven't done that, I challenge you to give it a try because it will open your world up in a whole new way. And I know that sounds silly, but it does. You get to know yourself on a different level and you start to appreciate things about yourself that you just didn't even know about yourself. And you also get to laugh at yourself like, oh my gosh, there's this thing I do all the time, but oh well, that's a part of who I am. I've learned that my eyes roll a lot when I'm talking. It's funny because Landon does the same thing. He must take after me without, like we'll be thinking when we're talking and it's like, oh, the eyes, roll around. But yeah, so now I forgot where that was going. I forgot what the question was.
Well, I mean, I think that, as a human whisperer, What I was asking is really
Yeah.
like, what's in you to make you want to do this? Because it's
So that's part of it.
not
too.
me.
It's the comfort zone too. Is like also setting the stage for women to not only connect with one another, but get to know themselves on a deeper level too.
Mm.
What's interesting about all this, I'm gonna be really raw here for a second, is I still have my own insecurities. I still have my own fears. I still have every single time it's meeting day. Trust me, the nerves are there. Are they going to be happy with it? And I have to remind myself every single time that all I need to do is just go in there and authentically be me and authentically do what I'm trying to do. And if there is somebody that doesn't have a good time or something or doesn't like something, then I hope that they'll come to me and then we can talk it out and fix it, whatever. I'm not going to please everyone. I know that. But with that said, I still, even though I've come as far as I have, I'm still growing. And that comfort zone is ever expanding for myself as well. You know, I've always struggled with being a people pleaser. I think a lot of that stems from my childhood, and it's something I still work on to this day. I catch myself a lot, like, like sometimes I get so wrapped up in like, oh my gosh, they're not going to like me anymore. And oh my gosh, I disappointed them. Like, oh, when I disappoint somebody, it just weighs so heavy on my heart. Even if I don't agree with the fact that I disappointed them, it just is really heavy on me. I've always kind of been a people pleaser, and something, where that shadow work has to take place to keep overcoming that. But even though I'm a leader, I have my own fears.
This is where I want to give kudos to humans like you that are magical at bringing people together. Because, when you initially asked me like, oh, you want to speak at my event? Like my immediate answer was, nah, not really. But I've always been a sort of like that warrior of, I'm going to say yes to things that freak me out. So I do it. But what was an amazing experience that you bring to the table is that very story you just told of how what was in you is you push yourself to be authentic. Because everybody says that, but it's like an intentional decision every single day to be authentic. It doesn't just happen because you said it one time in 2021, right? It's not like it's in you. It's a constant until it becomes who you are. And what was beautiful about that is I was so nervous. Now, people think I'm very extroverted. I'm very social. I like podcasts. I like lives no longer intimidate me. But speaking, that's a whole different thing because in my mind, it's like it needs to be structured, but that's also not me, right? And I have to really reel in this whole sentence enhancing type thing that is just natural for me. I like to drop the F-bomb and I say things that make the sentence a little bit more robust. And so I don't like public speaking because of that, because I have to feel like I have to reel in so much of who I am. And you never said to me, you didn't say, by the way, I'm super authentic and I want you to be, I am authentic. My skin is authentic. I have jackets in authenticity. My hairdress, like you didn't spew to me about being authentic, but because your energy was already that, it made it so,
that word is like honestly hardly ever on my mind, which is kind of funny that.
Well, when I went in there, I came in with all these notes in my head and made one, not a single one. Just started. And I feel like I've connected so well with the women in your group, right? And they've connected. And I think that that's it right there, is that at the root of your very being, people who are being who they are don't have to go around saying what it is that they are, right? And I think that that's what is different about you but also what makes you stand out, because every person who's a human whisperer needs to have that core value that they are, and you just bring that to the table, and it's just amazing. And I'm just like, okay, that's what it is. That's the formula. We all have a formula of the thing that we're being called to be, right? And that's it. I think, yeah, you started off with saying structure and connection. That's just all of the tactical stuff, but the version of you. And we could go on. There's so many stories this woman has already shared with me. And I'm like, oh, we can talk about that. We can talk about that. But every story you've ever told me is this real, I stood up. I stood up for the thing I believed in. I stood up for the people I believe in. I stood up. That standing up for something is the most raw version of human authenticity, because it's not a standing up for something, not awesome. It's like you're about to get slammed, tomatoes thrown at you. You shun the big scarlet letter, get out of places, get
experience. I've experienced that.
But that's why I think, and did she pay me to plug her group? No, not even close. And I'm not even a member because it is a little far for me to go. However, what I'm saying is this is what you look for. If somebody had told me, mind you, my husband and I ran a very successful business for over 20 years. Not one time did I ever go to networking. But if I had taken that step, knowing a person like you that just was like, trust me, it's worth it. Just go for it. Just step into it. I'd have done it a lot sooner because I wouldn't know what to look for. What I would have looked for is somebody who doesn't just say they're authentic, but actually is the very essence of that authenticity. Because that's your core value. And I could get behind that. I can get behind that core value, even if it's not the thing that my core value exists in. Right? Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for showing up as you, because that is really, and all the stories I'm thinking, what's the common denominator with this woman that makes her so magical? And that's it right there. And I bet you that's what made all of your businesses so successful too. Because even though you didn't know what you were doing, it was so authentically you. People were lining up.
Yeah. It's funny because I still have a hard time taking compliments. That's part of the people pleasing, right? It's compliments go to someone else. So I thank you. Like I said, the word authentic or authenticity doesn't come to mind when I think of myself. I do use the word sometimes when I talk about, being a part of the group and like being authentic with one another, but it's very rare. I don't use that word a whole lot, which is interesting that you've brought it up, because I'm like, I really don't use that word a whole lot. And like you were trying to say, a lot of the ones who use it all the time are not truly honoring authenticity. So that's really interesting. But
because you embody it. You just walk around as that human being. Like, okay, just a little background before we got on, ladies. She was telling me the story about, I know a lot of you will feel this and understand this about being in the PTA and what that is. And I was like, the way that you were sharing the stories, because people pleasing and then not being authentic, that's the conflict, right?
Oh, yeah.
Authentic, that's the boundary.
Right.
That's, I think, where it's like, I can people please up to a degree, but this is a boundary that we don't cross, because this is at the core of who I am. And hence, all the things happen, right? And I think these are the truths we don't reveal to the world. Like, you were so surprised at yourself. Gosh, I don't use that word, but that is how I exist. Because that's the truth. The truth is, you're going to be authentic no matter what environment you're in, no matter what, right? Homelessness, not homelessness, being in a grand house to not being, owning a shop, not owning a shop, all of it. Those are just like, I feel like those are just, what do they say? The bonus round. That's just the bonus round. So let me ask you this question. You're 25 years old, and the version of you now is walking down the street, and you walk into a coffee shop and you see 25-year-old Jessica. Now take yourself back to that time. What would you say to that version of you that you would actually listen to?
You're worth so much more than you give yourself credit for, and you are going to do great things. So get focused. My 25-year-old self, I was still a lost soul at the time. But yeah, and that life will get better, just to keep pushing forward. Don't give up. And really you are worth so much more than you think you are.
And the way you said it too, like my 24-year-old self got real straight there for a minute. It's how you said it too. I think there's a power in your tone and looking into her eyes that would really shift that version of you. So what a great way to end our conversation. Is there anything you want to say in terms of your group? Because I know that it's newly formed. You said in the beginning that you had it together in October of 24, but then it's really like now it's open to the public to come join. Where are you located? And in not a cheesy way, why should we join?
So we're located in Ruston on Pearl Street, both where the meetings take place and where the shop exists.
What city is that?
Ruston is its own city, but it's North Tacoma. So there's a couple ways. Right now, the website is live, but there's a new one launching hopefully by the end of this month. So there will be, right now, it still looks like it's the beginning phases, and I totally had to redo the website because of the shop being a part of the business. So that's getting worked on the back end. There is a Facebook group. So we have a private group for the members, but there's a private group for those interested. And we can post I think you have a way to post some information. Go post the link to the Facebook group that anyone can do, because that's where you can learn when the meetings are taking place. I do not post the meetings publicly because I want to be very intentional about who's coming in. And so it's really by invite only. But if you're in that group, that's your invitation, because now I know like you're serious about it. And that's really just to keep the group protected and keep the integrity of the group. So I don't post the meetings publicly. They're not on Eventbrite. They're not out there, but they do get posted in that group. So we can post the link to that group. And then why you want to be a part of this group, I think a lot of that was said here. I think you will have to find your own reasons why. What is it that do you feel like you want to or need to find women to be more heart-centered with? Have you had that experience? Because if not, you will find it at Bloom. Bloom Society will provide that for you. I say the first meeting you come to is absolutely free. You get to come and experience it as our guest. And so if it's, something that is touching your heart, then come join us for a meeting and experience it for yourself. And maybe if you don't know why, you'll find out why when you're there that you need to be a part of the group. I can't really speak to what your why is to be there. I can just tell you that those of us that are a part of it all have different whys. I've shared my why and leading it, but I really think you have to figure that why out for yourself.
Thank you for that. I loved how you answered it and totally followed the formula of not cheesy, salesy, because that really is, I think, the most beautiful experience of somebody who's gathering human connection.
I can try to sell it and give you all these reasons, but I think everyone who comes to the group, and just even from my experience with the members we have, they all have different reasons that they've become a part of the group. And so I think that that really is up to the person that is looking to come be a part of the group. They have their own why, and I can't speak to what your why is. That's yours.
I love that. Thank you so much. And if you're listening to this and you're like, where is Tacoma? It's in Washington State. So if you're ever in the area, or if you're anywhere within 20-mile radius of that, come and experience it. Seriously, I highly recommend experiencing human connection. And really, I think it's a great space to heal our sister wounds, and also a great place to nurture and nourish the sisterhood in a not housewives way, right?
We don't do that. That's not allowed there.
Well, I'll have all of that information in our show notes.
We leave the clicks and drama at the door. And then when you do come to join us, or maybe you just want to come check out the shop, I don't think I really mentioned this, but the shop itself is filled with items that are mostly handmade or curated by women local to our community. So when you shop at Bloom Society shop, you are supporting other local small businesses. So
yeah, so much. And it's super cute. It's in a super cute part of Tacoma. Like I didn't even know that that area existed up there with the restaurant. It's like its own, you're right. It is its own little city. I mean, it is qualified as that. But thank you so much for being here. If this episode is something you're like, wow, she spoke to me, share it. Share it with your friends. Share it with another woman, share it with your group, have your community listen to it together, because I think there were so many amazing nuggets that were being thrown in, and so much goodness of women, two women just chatting it up, being friends. That's what we're doing. Follow us on our social media sites. It's all under my name, Wonderful Morrison, and leave us a review. Let us know how much you liked it or how much. Don't say how much you don't like it, because we don't need to hear all that. And until next time, everyone, thank you so much. Bye. Thank you so much for being with me on today's journey. If you felt something resonate, if you saw yourself in this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe. Share it with a friend who needs this space, and leave a review. It helps others find us, and it's a small way you can be a part of this powerful movement. Ladies, this isn't just a podcast. It's a community, a revolution, a place where midlife women come together to embrace our hard-earned wisdom and vibrant truth. So thank you for being part of this. Remember, it's time. It's time to step into our truth. No more holding back. Midlife is ours to own, and it's only getting started. So, until next time, take a breath, honor your journey, and live with audacity, courage, and joy. This is our time, our truth, unraveled, revealed, and celebrated.